His note to Mary had come back misspelled. Now, you won't know that from my reading it because you'd have to read it yourself. But he misspelled come and he misspelled back. He dropped the C and he spelled come C-U-M. So, that's English spelling is difficult. And so he spelled incorrectly because he wasn't taught it. But he knows so many other things that, a little bit of cacography can be forgiven. So she finally met her guardian, and she went and she asked him, "Can I have a bit of earth?" And this is something that's kind of important. She is getting permission to have her garden. She got permission to have it anywhere she wanted. So, her having the secret garden is perfectly all right. Now, the thing is that Mr. Craven probably didn't consider that she was in the garden because it had been locked up for 10 years. He assumed that she couldn't climb over the high brick wall, that she wouldn't climb over the high brick wall, that there was just some random bit of dirt that the gardeners weren't working on, that wasn't in the process of growing food or flowers or whatever, that she had taken a fancy to. And so he was like, fine, take whatever you want. Because he has a whole bunch of land. And, she's a little girl and she could only dig up so much of it. He's like, okay, fine, take whatever you want. You won't cause any trouble because, I've worked a little bit of ground. I've been working a little bit of ground, working on my garden, trying to improve it. And let me tell you, it is hard work. And so a young girl who has been suffering from various tropical diseases for her entire life is not going to be able to dig up that much land. So he's like, fine, take whatever you want. And it completely slipped his mind that the garden existed, I imagine. And even if he did think about it, the book described him as seeing in her something that reminded him of someone else. Now, the thing is that Mary's mother was Mr. Craven's wife. So Mary is his niece. And so you figure that Mary looks like her mother, and the mother looks like the sister. So Mary probably looks like his wife to a certain extent. And when you're young, your features are more malleable and you tend to look like less like yourself and more like other people.
You said that sentence wrong.
I said what sentence wrong?
Mary's mother was Mr. Craven's wife, is what you said.
No, sorry. Okay, I said that sentence wrong. Mary's mother was the sister of Mr. Craven's wife. So Mary looks like her mother, and the mother looks like this mother's sister. So Mary would look like her aunt. Anyway, so everybody is happy with this arrangement. Mary gets her garden. Mr. Craven is happy that he's able to help, that he knows that he's not a good guardian. He's not a good person to watch out over children. And here he is, he's doing something that someone who's an expert, Martha's mother is an expert at watching out over children. She's watched out over 12 of them. He's doing something that an expert says is good. It's making Mary happy. It's making Mrs. Medlock happy. Mrs. Medlock was tasked somewhat with watching out over Mary. And so here you have Mary, who is in a lot of ways a wild child because she was never contained. She was never instructed on what is proper. So she just wanders around and does her own stuff. And so Mrs. Medlock has kind of been running this line between not wanting to know what Mary is doing and trying to control what Mary is doing. So she figures that if she doesn't know what Mary's doing, then she doesn't have to stop it. And now she's been given full permission to let Mary do pretty much whatever. So Mrs. Medlock is happy. Mary is happy. Martha's happy because Mary is happy. Dickon's happy because he has a new garden to play in. I mean, let's just be frank about this. Dickon loves gardening and plants and animals and growing things. And so here he has something that's just like an excellent garden spot, but isn't really touched. And so he can just like grow it to his heart's content, and he could teach Mary all of these things and guide her in the way of gardening, which is just like awesome in his book. So everybody is happy with this. And so Martha has her bit of earth. We'll see what Mary has her bit of earth. We'll find out what Mr. Craven thinks about it if he finds out what she's been gardening. I figure he'll probably figure it out come fall, but we'll see. They also talked about how Mr. Craven's forehead was bunched together. Now, it's an interesting thing that when you hold your face in a certain way, if you always smile, then you get these lines that form when you smile. So right now I have these creases. They're like this because this is the way that my face naturally sits, because I guess I've smiled. So I have these smile lines. And I have these lines that run like this in my forehead because I pinch my brows together, and it's like, pinch my brows together and look and concentrate. So I have these lines that run like this. And there are some people who have frown lines like this that run horizontal, because they're always just like, So frown lines run horizontal like this. And you can kind of tell how people think because you look at the way their lines run. And make a habit of noticing that. Because when the face rests, you kind of see the echoes of all the emotions that people have felt across their life. So if they're constantly smiling, you just see the smile lines and they kind of look happy. And other times, other people, they just kind of look sad. Resting bitch face. Yeah, there's a thing called resting bitch face, which they've actually analyzed, and I'm trying to remember. It's kind of like they've actually analyzed it and broken down what goes into it, and it's just this sort of disgust. It's a slight disgust face. It's an unimpressed. It's slightly disgust. It's slightly sad, and it generally refers to being unimpressed. But anyway, make it a habit of looking at people's faces, because, as I said, it's just like kind of the integral. It's the sum of everything that they felt in their life. And so, being young, you don't have as many lines, and you haven't felt as much, and the lines aren't as deep. But once you get old like me, all of the lines are there, and all of the cares, and all of the worries, and all of the thoughts have just been etched slowly into the face.